You should leave this place before the clock strikes 8. The voice was soft, almost lost beneath the clink of glasses and the low hum of conversation, but it cut straight through Victor Hale's nerves. He turned his head slowly, expecting to see a mistake, some nervous waiter trying to get his attention. Instead, he found a young woman standing beside the table with a tray in one hand and a folded note tucked between two fingers. Her name tag read Mia Collins. She looked calm, almost too calm for someone standing this close to one of the most dangerous men in the city. Victor had spent most of the evening pretending not to notice the way people watched him. It was supposed to be a simple business dinner, a polished room full of expensive suits, quiet laughter, and signatures that would decide who controlled half the waterfront by morning. Yet everything about the night felt wrong. The air felt heavy. The smiles around the table looked forced. And now this waitress, who should have faded into the background like everyone else, was looking at him with a strange kind of urgency that made him stop breathing for a second. He did not take the note right away. Instead, his sharp eyes searched her face for any sign of fear, any hint that she had been sent by someone, but Mia did not flinch. She simply waited, her posture steady, her expression unreadable. That alone made Victor more suspicious. People usually trembled around him. They looked away. They tried too hard to please him. But this woman stood there like she knew exactly who he was and was not impressed by it. At last, Victor took the folded paper. His fingers brushed hers for less than a second, but even that tiny contact carried a strange tension, as if she had just crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Mia lowered her eyes only then, not in submission, but in caution. It was the kind of look someone wore when they were trying to protect themselves from being noticed. Victor unfolded the note beneath the table. 3 words stared back at him in hurried ink. Don't drink it. His gaze shifted almost instantly to the glass of red wine in front of him. It had been poured less than a minute earlier by one of the hosts, a man smiling too widely, too confidently, like he was waiting for Victor to take the first sip. The room had not changed, yet everything inside Victor had. His pulse slowed instead of racing. That was the first sign he was in danger. Real danger never arrived with shouting. It arrived quietly, with a smile, with a full glass, with a warning slipped from the hand of a waitress who should have meant nothing at all. Across the table, one of the men raised his own glass as if to toast. Victor forced himself to lift his chin, to look relaxed, to play the part expected of him. But inside, every instinct he had sharpened over years of surviving betrayal was screaming the same message. Someone in this room had planned something ugly, and Mia Collins had just stepped out of the shadows to stop it. The question was not whether she knew more than she should. The question was why. Victor kept the note hidden in his palm, while the conversation around the table continued as if nothing unusual had happened. That was the strangest part. Everyone kept smiling, speaking in smooth voices, lifting forks, adjusting cufflinks, pretending this night was about business and not something darker lurking under the polished surface. Mia had already stepped away, moving to another table with the quiet efficiency of someone trained to disappear. Yet Victor could still feel the weight of her warning burning in his hand. He did not drink. Not yet. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and let his expression stay loose, almost careless, as if the wine had never mattered to him at all. But inside, every second stretched thin. The man across from him, Leonard Grant, was watching him with a polite smile that no longer looked harmless. Leonard had been the one talking the loudest all evening, pressing contracts forward, praising loyalty, speaking about trust in the way only a man with something to hide ever could. Victor had met enough liars to know the signs. The smile stayed on too long. The eyes never did. Mia returned 10 minutes later with another tray, this time carrying coffee, dessert plates, and a quiet glance that landed on Victor for no more than a heartbeat. It was enough. There was urgency in that tiny look, and Victor noticed the faint tightness in her jaw, the way her fingers stayed controlled even as she set the cups down. She was not just nervous. She was waiting for something. Leonard raised his glass again. A toast, he said, voice warm and easy. To profitable partnerships. The others echoed him. Crystal clinked softly against crystal. Victor lifted his glass halfway, but did not drink. Leonard's eyes flicked to the wine, then back to Victor's face. It happened too fast for anyone else to notice, but Victor caught it. A brief flash of irritation. A mistake. the first crack in a carefully built mask. Victor set the glass down and reached instead for the folded napkin beside his plate. He unfolded it slowly, as if bored, and inside he found something he had not expected, a matchbook from the hotel bar with a number written on the back. Below it was one word in Mia's handwriting. Basement. That was when Victor knew the warning was only the beginning. He stood up with measured calm, adjusting his jacket as though he were merely stepping away for a private call. The table fell briefly silent. Leonard's smile remained, but now it looked brittle around the edges. Victor glanced toward Mia, who had already moved toward the service hallway, her pace steady and deliberate. She never looked back, but somehow he knew she wanted him to follow. The corridor behind the dining room was dimmer, quieter, lined with framed photographs and muted carpet that swallowed every sound. Victor walked without haste, though his senses sharpened with every step. The farther he went from the main room, the clearer the truth became. Someone had arranged this dinner to look like a negotiation, but it was really a trap. And Mia, the waitress who should have been invisible, had somehow stepped into the middle of it and risked everything to pull him out. By the time he reached the service door at the end of the hall, he no longer had any doubt. The real danger was not in the glass on the table. It was waiting below. Victor opened the service door and stepped into a narrow stairwell that smelled of bleach, old stone, and something faintly metallic. That made the back of his neck tighten. The sounds of the dining room disappeared behind him, replaced by the low thud of music leaking through walls and the distant rhythm of shoes moving across polished floors above. The matchbook in his hand had led him here, but now that he stood in the darkness, he realized the note had not been an invitation. It was a test. At the bottom of the stairs, a single bulb flickered over a basement corridor lined with industrial pipes and storage doors marked with faded numbers. Mia was waiting near the last door on the left, her arms folded, her posture calm in a way that made the whole hallway feel even colder. She did not look surprised to see him. That bothered him more than if she had. "You came," she said quietly. "I don't usually follow notes from strangers," Victor replied. Mia gave the smallest nod, as if that answer confirmed something she already knew. "Good. Then at least you're still careful." Victor stopped a few feet away. "Start explaining." But instead of answering, Mia tilted her head toward the corridor behind him. "Not here." Victor followed her gaze and saw what she had been watching all along. The faint reflection of movement in a metal panel near the stairs. Someone had been standing there, listening, waiting. His body went still for half a second, then shifted just enough to let the tension in his shoulders settle into something harder, sharper. He had spent years learning how to survive in rooms where danger smiled at him. But this was different. This was patience. This was preparation. Mia unlocked the basement door and stepped inside first. The room beyond was small and dim, lit by one hanging lamp and the pale light of a monitor on a steel desk. Boxes were stacked against the wall, and a phone sat face down beside a half-empty cup of water. The setup looked temporary, but the air carried the unmistakable pressure of a place where secrets had been gathered, sorted, and hidden for someone else to find. Victor's eyes narrowed. "You've been down here before." "Yes." "Who are you?" That time, Mia did not answer immediately. She crossed to the desk, picked up the phone, and turned it over. There was a crack across the screen, but it still worked. She pressed one button, then placed it in front of him. On the screen was a live feed from the dining room above. Victor saw Leonard speaking to two men at the far end of the table. Their smiles were gone now. One of them reached into a pocket. The other glanced toward the hallway. They were no longer pretending. Mia's voice remained level. They were never planning to negotiate tonight. They wanted you distracted, isolated, and alive just long enough to sign the papers. Victor looked from the screen to her face. "And you know this how?" Mia's jaw tightened, but she held his gaze. "Because I've seen this before." That answer landed harder than any threat. Victor studied her in silence, noticing the way she stood, the way she watched the screen, the way her calm seemed less like fear and more like discipline. She was not acting like a waitress who had stumbled into danger. She was acting like someone who understood exactly how ugly it could become. A loud sound echoed overhead. Something heavy had been dropped in the dining room. Then another sound followed, closer this time, a door opening somewhere down the hall. Mia reached into her pocket and handed Victor a small black key card. "If you want out, use the side exit. If you want the truth, stay." For the first time that night, Victor felt the shape of a larger trap closing around him, and standing in the middle of it was the woman everyone had failed to notice. Victor did not take the key card immediately. He kept his eyes on Mia, instead, studying her the way he studied every uncertain thing in life. Slowly, carefully, with the patience of a man who understood that one wrong assumption could cost him everything. Above them, another heavy sound rolled through the ceiling. Then came the sharp scrape of a chair, followed by the muffled rush of movement. The dinner upstairs was no longer pretending to be a dinner. "You said you've seen this before," Victor said. "Seen what?" Mia's face did not change, but something behind her eyes tightened. "Men like Leonard," she replied. "Men who smile while they build a trap right under your feet." Victor let out a quiet breath. Through his nose. He had spent years around people exactly like that, but something in Mia's voice suggested this was not just theory. She had lived it. Maybe more than once. The basement door behind them clicked softly. Neither of them moved. The sound was small, almost polite, but in that moment it felt like a gun being cocked in a silent room. Victor turned his head just enough to see the shadow beneath the door shift. Someone was in the hall. Close. Listening. Mia stepped toward the desk and shut off the monitor. Darkness softened the room for half a second, and in that brief pause Victor saw the kind of control she had over herself. No panic. No wasted motion. She reached into the desk drawer, pulled out a slim silver object, and set it beside the phone. "A lockpick?" Victor asked. "A habit," she said, that almost made him smile, though he did not let it reach his face. Instead, he took the key card from her hand at last and slipped it into his coat pocket. "If you wanted to help me, you could have said something before the wine." "I did," Mia said. "You just decided not to trust me." There was no anger in her tone. That was what unsettled him most. She was not trying to win the argument. She was trying to survive long enough to finish it. Then the hallway outside the basement filled with footsteps. 3 pairs. Maybe 4. Victor moved without thinking, stepping to the side as Mia crossed to the door. She glanced at him once, and in that glance he saw a question she had not asked out loud. The kind of question that only appeared when the next few seconds decided whether a person became an ally or a corpse. He answered it with a nod. Mia opened the door just enough to look out, then immediately pulled it shut again. "They're searching the corridor," she whispered. "Leonard knows I'm gone." Victor folded his arms. "So now what?" Mia looked toward the narrow stairwell, then back at him. "Now we find out who else is down here." Victor stared at her for a moment, then glanced at the shadows around the room. The hum of the overhead light felt louder than before. Somewhere above, voices rose in clipped, agitated bursts. Something had gone wrong upstairs. Or maybe something had finally gone right for the people who wanted him dead. Mia reached for the slim silver object and tested it once in her palm. "There's a second room behind this wall," she said. "Records, phones, copies of everything they've been hiding." Victor's expression hardened. That was not just a threat. That was proof. If there were records, there were names. If there were names, there were betrayals. And if Mia knew where all of it was kept, then she was not only involved, she was essential. He looked at her again, this time with a different kind of focus. "Who are you really?" Mia met his gaze without blinking, and for the first time since she handed him the note, Victor realized the answer might change everything. When Mia heard Victor say "not yet," something in her face changed, just slightly, but enough for him to notice. It was the first time that night she had looked less like a careful shadow and more like a woman who had been holding her breath for years. She turned away quickly, as if she regretted letting that moment show. Above them, the hallway noise sharpened. A door slammed. Voices rose. Then came the unmistakable crack of something breaking hard against the wall. The people upstairs were no longer trying to stay elegant. The trap had torn open, and panic was bleeding through it. Mia moved first. She crossed to the back wall beside the file shelves and ran her fingers over the molding until she found a hidden latch. With a soft click, a narrow panel gave way, revealing a dark chamber behind the basement wall. Victor followed her inside without hesitation, one hand already near his jacket where he kept the gun he had not needed to show yet. The hidden room was colder than the basement, lined with metal cabinets, sealed boxes, and rows of labeled folders stacked in perfect order. On one table sat a laptop, 2 encrypted drives, and a thick ledger wrapped in clear plastic. It looked like the kind of room built by someone who planned to survive by knowing too much. Victor stared at the evidence. This is what they were hiding. Mia nodded. The books, the transfers, the names of everyone who touched the money. Leonard kept all this. Under the building? Not all of it. Just enough to control the people who mattered. Victor picked up one folder and flipped it open. Inside were bank records, shipment logs, and handwritten notes linking restaurant reservations, warehouse drop-offs, and offshore accounts. The operation was far bigger than he had guessed. It spread across ports, construction firms, and private security contracts. It had teeth. It had reach. And if the wrong people found out, the city would burn for it. Then he saw a name printed across one of the pages. Hale. Victor went still. Mia noticed immediately. What? He did not answer right away. He turned the page, then another, and found his own company buried in the transaction chain. His businesses, his funding, his people. The system had touched him far more than he had realized. That's impossible, he muttered. Mia stepped closer, her eyes scanning the documents. No, it's not. Victor looked up sharply. You knew? I suspected. That's not the same thing. No, she said quietly. But it's close enough to make you dangerous to them. Another heavy door shook the wall behind them. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Someone was trying the basement route now. Victor shut the folder and pressed it against his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something he had nearly forgotten, certainty becoming anger, and anger becoming focus. The trap was bigger than Leonard, bigger than one corrupted dinner. It reached into his world, his name, his power, and maybe even his own past. Mia watched him closely, and he realized the hidden skill he had sensed in her was not just about surviving danger. She understood systems, paper trails, human weakness, the kind of intelligence that did not roar but dismantled everything quietly from the inside. Who taught you this? He asked. For a second, she said nothing. Then she answered, my father did. Before he disappeared, the answer landed like a door closing. Victor's eyes moved over the room again, over the files, the drives, the ledger, and the woman who had brought him here. She was not just a waitress with a warning. She was a key to something much larger, and she had chosen to put herself in the middle of it. And now, so had he. The wall shook again, harder this time, and a thin line of dust slipped down from the ceiling like the room itself was starting to give up its secrets. Victor could hear the basement door being forced somewhere outside, metal groaning against metal, followed by the sharp, hurried footsteps of men who no longer cared about staying quiet. The hidden room had gone from a refuge to a coffin in the span of a few seconds. Mia moved fast, snapping the laptop shut and shoving the drives into a small canvas bag. Her hands were steady, but Victor noticed the tension in her jaw had deepened. This was not fear. It was calculation. She was already measuring exits, timing, angles, and chances. The quiet waitress from upstairs was gone now, replaced by someone far more dangerous. Victor held the ledger under one arm and scanned the room. There has to be another way out. There is, Mia said, but not for long. She crossed to the far corner and pulled a lever hidden behind a stack of boxes. A section of the floor clicked open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel lined with rusted pipes and a faint draft of cold air. The opening was just wide enough for one person at a time. Victor looked at it, then at her. You knew about this too. I told you, she said. I've seen men like Leonard before. Something in her tone made Victor stop. It was not pride. It was experience. Real experience. The kind that leaves marks you don't show anyone. He studied her face in the dim light and saw it clearly for the first time. Mia was not merely connected to this mess. She had been surviving it long before tonight. She understood the language of corruption because she had grown up hearing it. A muffled shout came from beyond the wall. Then another. They're almost here, Victor said. Mia nodded once. Take the ledger. He tightened his grip on it. And you? I'll cover the tunnel. Victor stared at her. That answer irritated him more than it should have. You think I'm leaving you behind? Mia gave him a look so flat and direct that it stopped him cold. I think you're trying to decide whether to trust me, and if you take too long, none of this matters. That was the first time she had spoken to him like an equal. Not as a server, not as a stranger, as someone with enough authority to call him out on his hesitation. And, to his surprise, he respected it. Another radar crashed into the basement door. The lock snapped. Voices flooded the corridor. Mia reached into the desk drawer, pulled out a compact pistol, and checked the chamber with one fast motion that left no room for doubt. Victor's gaze flicked to it. He had known she was skilled, but not like this. Not with that kind of control. She moved the weapon with the ease of someone who had practiced long after the world had told her she would not need to. That was the twist he had been circling all night. Mia was not just a waitress who had stumbled into a bad room at the wrong time. She was trained. She was prepared. And whatever had happened to her father had forced her into a life where she had learned to hide in plain sight. "Who are you, really?" Victor asked again. This time, Mia gave him the smallest, guarded smile. Someone they didn't expect to survive. The basement door finally gave way with a metallic scream. Mia shoved the ledger into Victor's chest. "Go." He hesitated only once, then dropped into the tunnel. Cold air rushed past him as he turned back, just in time to see her step into the doorway, gun raised, shoulders squared, not like a victim, but like a threat. For one suspended second, Victor understood the truth. She had not only saved his life, she had entered his world by choice. And the people coming through that door were about to find out exactly what kind of mistake they had made. The tunnel was barely tall enough for Victor to move without scraping his shoulders against the rusted metal walls. Cold air brushed past him in short, damp breaths, carrying the smell of dust, old water, and something sharper underneath it. Oil, maybe, or machinery that had not been used in years. Behind him, the basement door had exploded open in a burst of shouting, and now every sound from above felt distant and distorted, as though the building itself had swallowed the fight and was trying to bury it. Victor kept one hand on the ledger and the other against the wall as he moved forward. He could still hear Mia in his head. Go. He hated that she had been right to say it. The tunnel bent twice before opening into a narrow maintenance hall lined with pipes and a faded exit sign glowing weakly at the far end. Victor emerged into a service corridor beneath the building, where the concrete floor was slick and the silence felt heavier than before. He turned once, expecting Mia to appear behind him. She did not. Instead, above him, came the muffled sound of a struggle, one sharp impact, then another, followed by a voice shouting her name. Victor's jaw tightened. He looked toward the corridor ahead, then back toward the ceiling, where the fight was still unfolding somewhere beyond the layers of steel and stone. For half a second, he stood there as if deciding whether to keep running or turn back into the trap. Then he stopped. No man like Victor Hale spent his life surviving by ignoring the people who had just saved him. He had built his empire on loyalty, fear, and the understanding that every debt eventually came due. And Mia had just paid one that was not hers. He moved quickly back toward the service stairwell, climbing 2 steps at a time until he reached a reinforced door that opened into a storage passage near the kitchen level. The sound of chaos hit him at once. Chairs were overturned. Glass shattered somewhere close. Men were shouting over one another, their voices stripped of the polished charm they had worn earlier in the night. Victor pushed through the door and saw Leonard Grant near the far side of the room, one sleeve torn, his face drawn tight with panic. 2 of his men were trying to corner Mia near a row of servers' carts. She held the pistol low but steady, moving in a way that made it clear she did not need to point the gun to be dangerous. The moment Leonard saw Victor, his expression shifted from fear to disbelief. "You're supposed to be gone," Leonard snapped. Victor stepped into the room with the ledger in his hand. "That was your mistake." For a second, nobody moved. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then Leonard's gaze flicked to the ledger, and the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place inside his head. He understood, too late, what Victor had found. Mia's voice cut through the tension, calm and cutting. "You buried the truth in paperwork and threats. You really thought no one would notice." Leonard laughed once, but it sounded hollow. "And what are you going to do? Hand that to the police?" "No," Victor said. His voice was low, steady, and far more dangerous than a shout. "I'm going to make sure every person in this room remembers what they did here tonight." Leonard's eyes moved between them, finally recognizing the mistake he had made. He had treated Mia like background noise. He had treated Victor like a man he could control. Now both of them stood in front of him with the truth in their hands. Mia glanced at Victor, and in that brief look there was no fear left, only alignment. The alliance had formed under pressure, not trust, but it was real enough to matter. And Leonard was about to learn that the people he tried to bury had come back together. Leonard took a step backward, and for the first time since Victor had met him, the man looked small. Not physically. Leonard still had the tailored suit, the the practiced posture, the kind of face built to survive in boardrooms and private rooms alike. But something in him had cracked. The ledger in Victor's hand had done what threats could not. It had turned certainty into panic. The room remained frozen for one long second. Then Leonard moved for the side door. Victor saw it first and reacted instantly, stepping in front of him before the man could make it 3 feet. Leonard's shoulder hit Victor's arm, and the contact was enough to stop him cold. Mia shifted to the right, cutting off the other exit with the same calm precision she had used all night. There was nowhere left to run. "You should have stayed with the story you told yourself," Mia said quietly. Leonard stared at her, breathing hard now, his mask collapsing piece by piece. "You don't know what you're doing." Mia's expression did not change. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I spent years learning how people like you hide greed inside routine and call it business." Victor glanced at her then, really glanced at her, and understood that her anger had never been random. It had been built, shaped, sharpened by loss. The man she had once trusted was gone because of this machine, and she had spent every day after that teaching herself how to survive it. Leonard's gaze darted toward Victor. "You think she's helping you because she cares about you?" Victor said nothing. Leonard gave a broken laugh. "She came here for revenge." Mia's fingers tightened slightly around the pistol. "And you came here to kill people who knew too much." Victor stepped forward, holding the ledger up between them like evidence and judgment at once. "We're done talking." At the far end of the corridor, sirens began to rise. Not close yet, but near enough to turn the air electric. Someone had finally called it in. Maybe one of the staff. Maybe one of Leonard's men, deciding he preferred witnesses to prison. It did not matter now. What mattered was that the night had collapsed beyond repair. Leonard's face lost the last of its color. "If you give that to anyone, you'll drag half the city down with you." Victor's voice remained even. "That was your plan, not mine." Mia looked toward the growing sound of sirens, and then back to Victor. For the first time, something almost like relief touched her face. Not joy, not safety, just the understanding that the worst part was over and the next part would be honest. The truth was bigger than either of them. Bigger than one restaurant, one drink, one warning passed in secret. It reached into old debts, family ghosts, names buried in ledgers, and power built on silence. But tonight, silence had broken. Victor turned his head slightly toward Mia. "You knew this would happen." "I hoped it would," she said. That answer lingered between them, sharp and human and entirely sincere. She had not been saved by him. He had not been saved by chance. They had each stepped into the same fire for different reasons and emerged tied to the same truth. The police would arrive soon. The ledger would be opened. Leonard would be exposed. And whatever came next would be messy, public, and impossible to take back. But as Victor looked at Mia standing under the harsh corridor light, he realized the real twist was not the trap, or the betrayal, or even the secret hidden beneath the city. It was her. The waitress who had slipped him a warning had become the one person in the room he could no longer afford to lose. In this dark romance thriller, a powerful mafia boss receives a mysterious warning from a quiet waitress who seems to know more than she should. What begins as a simple note, "Don't drink it," turns into a night of secrets, betrayal, hidden evidence, and a dangerous truth buried beneath a luxury dinner. As the tension builds, the mafia boss is forced to question everyone around him, while the waitress reveals skills, knowledge, and courage that no ordinary server could possess. Their uneasy alliance pulls them deeper into a web of corruption, revenge, and long-buried family pain, creating a dark romance that is both emotional and suspenseful. The story explores trust, survival, and the unexpected bond that forms when two people trapped in the same trap realize they may be the only ones who can save each other. With its slow-burn, dark romance atmosphere, high-stakes confrontation, and a final reveal that changes everything, this dark romance delivers a gripping mix of danger and emotion. If you enjoy dark romance stories with powerful chemistry, hidden pasts, and dramatic twists, this dark romance is designed to keep you watching until the very end.